Welcome to our discussion on the act of voting. The process of voting begins when a voter registers to vote. Voting registration requirements vary greatly from state to state. Some states require registration months in advance of an election. Others allow voters to register on the day of voting. In the United States, the voters use an Australian ballot, a secret ballot prepared by the government, distributed to all eligible voters, and when balloting is completed, counted by government officials in an unbiased fashion without corruption or regard to individual preferences. Because the U.S. Constitution guarantees the states the right to conduct elections, the mechanics and methods of voting vary widely from state to state. Some states use touchscreen technology. Others employ computerized ballots or punch cards that are counted by computers. Still others states use traditional lever ballots in which voters pull a lever to register their votes for a particular candidate. Despite those differences, all ballots are secret ballots. Although secret ballots are the norm today, that was not always the case. From the days of the early republic through the 19th century, many citizens exercised their right to vote using oral votes cast in public or written votes witnessed by others. Some made their electoral choices on color-coded ballots prepared by the political parties, which indicated which party the voter was supporting. In the 2000 presidential election between Democrat Al Gore and Republican George W. Bush, an enormous controversy erupted over the voting in Florida. Because of the closeness of the electoral vote, the outcome of the Florida election turned out to be pivotal. But the tallies in that state's election were in question, not only because of the narrow difference in the number of votes won by each candidate, but also because of the voting process itself. Florida citizens cast their vote on a punch card by poking through a chad, a ready-made perforation near the name of their candidate of choice. Officials then counted the punch card ballots using a computer program that calculated votes by counting the absence of chads. But in the case of the 2000 election, thousands of ballots could not be read by the computer and needed to be counted by hand. This unexpected development put election officials in the difficult and untimely, ultimately deeply controversial position of gauging voter intent. If a chad was hanging by one perforation only, did the voter intend to vote for that candidate? If you look, you can see different examples on the screen of what things are called pregnant chads, which were chads that were not already punched through, and hanging chads, which is up on the upper left-hand corner. What if the chad was pregnant, that is sticking out but not removed? What if the chad was dimpled and the voter had cast his or her entire ballot by only dimpling the chads? In the end, the U.S. Supreme Court had the final say. On December 12, 2000, the court halted the hand counting of ballots in Florida, with the court's majority ruling that the differing standards of hand counting ballots from one county to the next in the absence of a single judicial officer charged with overseeing the hand counts violated the Equal Protection Clause of the U.S. Constitution. The ruling meant that George W. Bush, who was leading in the count, was certified the winner of the Florida race, thus securing that state's 25 electoral college votes and the presidency of the United States. Indignation surrounding the 2000 election resulted in federal policy changes to the conduct of elections by the states. The key policy revision came through the passage of the Help America Vote Act of 2002. The Help America Vote Act of 2002 allocated $650 million to assist states in changing from punch card ballots to electronic voting systems and set a deadline of 2005 for states to comply, although some states have not yet done so. New York State was out of compliance for many years. There are two types of ballots, most commonly used in general elections in the states today. The first, the party column ballot, organizes the candidates by party so that all of a given party's candidates for every office are arranged in one column. The opposing party candidates appear in a different column. The impact of a party column ballot is twofold. First, party column ballots increase voters' tendency to vote the party line, that is, to vote for every candidate of a given party for every office. In fact, some states provide a party lever which allows a voter to vote for all of a given party's candidates simply by one pull of a lever or one press of a vote party button. Second, because they increase the tendency to vote the party line, party column ballots also increase the coattail effect. And this is the phenomenon where down ballot candidates who are running for lower level offices such as city council, benefit from the popularity of a top of ticket nominee. Often, the composition of city councils, county legislatures, and even state legislatures change because of a coattail effect from a popular presidential or gubernatorial candidate. Because party column ballots strengthen political parties, parties tend to favor this type of ballot, which is the most commonly used ballot in the United States. Another type of general election ballot is the office block ballot, which arranges all candidates of a particular office under the name of that office. Office block ballots are more likely to encourage ticket splitting, where voters split their ticket, that is, divide their votes between candidates from different parties. Because office block ballots de-emphasize political parties by breaking up the party line, the parties do not tend to favor them. The 2000 presidential election in Florida provides evidence that not only the voting process, but also the design of ballots can make a difference in outcomes. Specifically, with respect to the vote in Florida's Palm Beach County, where voters push a button on their voting machine ballot to register their vote. Critics charge that the ballot in use, the butterfly ballot, so called because candidates are listed in two wings with a common spine, was particularly confusing to voters. Because of the lack of ballot clarity, many Democrats complained that this ballot layout put the Gore-Lieberman ticket at a disadvantage. Although supporters of Reform Party candidate Pat Buchanan in Palm Beach County projected that he should have received at best 1,000 votes there, Buchanan received over 3,400 votes. Many people, including Buchanan himself, believed that these votes were mistakenly cast for him and intended for Al Gore. In fact, an additional 19,000 votes were nullified in the Palm Beach County election because voters cast 2 votes for president, presumably with balloters realizing too late that they had pushed the wrong button. Buchanan himself addressed this issue, saying, "If the 2 candidates they pushed were Buchanan and Gore, almost certainly those are Al Gore's votes and not mine. I cannot believe someone would vote for Gore and say, 'I made a mistake. I should have voted for Buchanan.' Maybe a small minority of them would have done that, but I've got to think that the vast majority of those votes would naturally belong to Al Gore and not to me." One form of voting, absentee voting, is a long-standing tradition by which voters cast their ballots in advance by mail when disability, illness, school, work, service in the armed forces, or travel prevents them from casting a ballot in their voting precinct. To cast an absentee ballot, an individual must typically apply, before a specific state-designated deadline, to vote by absentee in the county where he or she usually votes. The superintendent of elections then mails a ballot to the voter, who votes and then mails the ballot back. In Broome County, you can go to that website, which will take you to this page, and then that's what the actual ballot looks like. And I'm hoping that you will fill that out for not only the school budget votes, but for the local elections when you are at college. The absentee ballots are counted and added to the votes cast in the voting precincts. Requirements for absentee ballots vary from state to state. Some states require a legitimate excuse, but increasingly many states accept ballot applications simply because absentee voting is more convenient for the voter. A relatively recent development in the advent of statewide voting by mail, a practice that states have adopted in an attempt to increase voter participation by making voting more convenient. The first experiment with statewide vote by mail occurred in Oregon in 1996. In a special election there, where officials had predicted a turnout of less than 50%, more than 66% of voters cast their ballots. This experiment brought another benefit. It saved taxpayers more than $1 million. Oregon decided to continue the practice in the 2000 presidential election, in which voter turnout hit 80%, and in the 2004 presidential race, where the turnout approached 85%. Oregon has now taken the drastic step of abandoning voting in poll places on Election Day. There are obvious advantages to voting by mail. As Oregon's experiences demonstrates, more people participate when voting becomes easier. Further, increased participation may bring to office candidates who are more representative of the will of the people because more people had a say in their election. Some scholars, however, have criticized the vote by mail trend. One important criticism is that voting by mail means that people vote before the final days of the campaign, thus casting their ballot before some additional last-minute information might be revealed about the candidate. Indeed, some voters may cast their ballots before the political rivals' debates occur or before candidates fully articulate their message. Consider one case in Bainbridge Island, Washington, where it was revealed just days before the election that a candidate for mayor had padded his resume. By the time the exaggerations came to light, some voters had already cast their ballots by mail. Voting by mail also increases the chances of voter fraud. Even though states take measures to ensure the principle of one person, one vote, which is from Baker versus Carr, voting by mail presents opportunities for corruption. Voting at the polls requires a face-to-face encounter, but voting by mail does not. So ballots could be stolen from individuals' mailboxes or intercepted after having been mailed by a voter. Voting by mail also may eliminate the privacy associated with voting in recent times. With mail balloting, the vote occurs in a less controlled setting, and the voter might feel pressured by others to select a particular candidate. In contrast, booth voting affords privacy and secrecy that go far toward ensuring that the votes cast beyond the curtain reflect the individual's voter's will. Finally, voting by mail may undermine feelings of civic engagement by eliminating a source of psychological rewards for voters. Going to a polling place, signing the voting registry, entering the voting booth, and casting your vote can elicit feelings of patriotism, civic pride, and fulfillment of civic responsibility. The sense that you are doing your duty to help ensure the election of the best qualified candidates. Although the results may be the same with voting by mail, some evidence suggests that voting by mail does not bring with it the same sense of civic satisfaction that voting at a polling place confers.